The NFC, we're going to call it a grab bag, as wide open a conference as I can remember. A true situation where, sure, there are favorites, but how many of them do you believe in? Sure, there are 16 quarterbacks, but Aaron Rodgers is off to the other side. Tom Brady is retired. Like, who are the stars? Who are the guys that are going to carry the mantle? I don't know, but I can't wait to find out. If you're new to the show, we're going to try to do it as quickly and succinctly as possible. If I ramble a little bit too much, they're going to play some lovely little award show music. Guys, this is where you should do that. Yep, that right there. You know, like if the person is up on stage and talking too much and thanking too many people, they'll yank me off. They'll probably have to do it a few times, but we'll get there. I don't think that's going to be a problem for this first division. We're going to start with the biggest, baddest boy of all. Sorry if you're mad about it. It's the NFC East. It's the ratings driver. It's the division in the NFC with by far the most combined Super Bowls. The reigning NFC champs are there. America's team is there. Yeah, I said it. Sorry. Let's get into it. I've got my good buddy, Ralph Vacchiano, Fox Sports' NFC East writer on hand, longtime NFC East writer, longtime writer in the NFL community. I can't wait to break it down. Let's get right into it and get to the bottom of the NFC East. All right, Ralph, let's get right into it. Two longtime NFC East guys. And I honestly think in my 10 years, this is as good top to bottom as the division has ever looked. Obviously, the Eagles and Cowboys have been trading division titles for a while, but the Giants look like a feisty team all of a sudden, and it's a whole new era in Washington with the Commanders changing ownership groups as well. So let's get right into it. And what better place to start than the reigning NFC East the reigning NFC champs. Excuse me. Give the Eagles their proper respect, but I think that's what I'm most curious about. Is this is a team that is widely expected to repeat as NFC champs. I think the hype on the Eagles, justifiably, but it's very big. And I can't help but notice only 8 teams in the Super Bowl era have gotten back to the game after losing it. So this is, as good as the Eagles look on paper, this is a hard thing to do. And I'm curious to know if you think the Eagles have what it takes to get back to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and by the way, 3 of those 8 teams were the Buffalo Bills in back-to-back-to-back years. Exactly. So it is even harder than you'd think to get back to the Super Bowl after losing it. Do I think the Eagles are capable of it? Are they talented enough to do it? Absolutely. That's different than actually doing it. You're going to need some breaks along the way. They had really good health for most of last year, especially at all the key positions. They had a little blip where they lost Jalen Hurts for a couple of games. They managed to survive that. Is that going to continue? Probably not. They're probably going to have more adversity. They have a little harder schedule this year. Obviously, the division, has the potential to be either just as tough or tougher. But this Eagles team, I think it's actually better on paper than the year before. I mean, they had a monster defensive front last year with, they had 70 sacks. They go and they lose Javon Hargrave and his 11 sacks. They come and get Jalen Carter, the best player in the draft to play defensive tackle. They get Nolan Smith, one of the best edge rushers in the draft, later in the first round. They have another first rounder, Jordan Davis, a defensive tackle who they can plug in. They lose a couple of linebackers. They get Nakobe Dean, another strong linebacker coming out of college a year ago, to plug in there. They just seem to have this ability to find talent to replace the guys they lose, and they're keeping all of their key players on offense. Jalen Hurts, all his receivers, all his his tight ends, his offensive line. They do have a change at running back, but I'm not so sure that losing Miles Sanders and replacing him with a committee led by DeAndre Swift is a drop-off at all. So, this team is just still loaded. Again, they're probably not going to get all the same breaks, but I'd be really surprised if they're not a 12-win team by the end of it.
I'm not just saying this because the Eagles drafted half of the Georgia Bulldogs roster over the last 2 years, but they honestly remind me of a college team. It almost feels like the seniors graduated, whether you want to talk about Javon Hargrave or Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, and they are leaving the underclassmen to step up into their places. I mean, yes, I think the Eagles are talented, but I can't wait to see how Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean replacing TJ Edwards at linebacker. Like I said, it reminds me of a bunch of sophomores coming up to fill the seniors' shoes. I'm very curious to see if they can do it.
And that makes them unknowns, right? I mean, I'm just singing the praises of these guys as if they're going to step in and be all pros, which of course is the Eagles' expectations. And a lot of the scouts who saw these guys play think that they're going to step in and do great. They might not. We're not going to know until they actually get there. Maybe that's I don't know if it's an Achilles heel or the weakness to watch for the Eagles. They do have to replace some very talented guys. But again, this is a team that's been a factory of talent over the last few years. And that core they have, their, veteran core four and guys on offense like Jalen Hurts, like A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith now, secondary with Darius Slay and James Bradbury. There's a lot of really strong, good NFL players, good NFL leaders at key positions. And if there's any place that can nurture some of those freshmen and sophomores who are stepping up, it's the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, I want to stay for the record. Pretty much all my questions about the Eagles are on the defensive side of the ball. I think the offense is going to be absolutely awesome. All right, let's switch gears to the team that I am most familiar with easily, and that's the Dallas Cowboys. Ralph, this is the question that I've been asking all offseason. If not now, then when? And before you think I am putting too much hype on the Cowboys, it came out today. Mike McCarthy's mantra for his team this season is Carpe Omnia. I did not take Latin in high school, but thanks to Twitter, I know that it means seize everything. Seize everything is this team's motto. Yeah, I mean, so in case you think I'm stepping out of line asking if not now, then when, it sounds like Mike McCarthy agrees with me. I'm looking for a reason why the Cowboys shouldn't be able to do it this year. They've got a loaded defense. They've got one of the best young defenders in Micah Parsons. They've got a solid offensive line. They've got a Pro Bowl quarterback. They traded for Brandon Cooks to bolster their receiver core. They got a Pro Bowl running back. Ralph, what don't the Cowboys have? Why shouldn't I feel this way about them heading into the season?
Well, history is one reason. I feel like we've spent about 10 years saying, well, if not now for the Cowboys, when? This is it. They're loaded. Let's go. And it never quite seems to happen. Now, that doesn't mean anything about this year. The truth is they are loaded. If you ask me who is the second best team in the NFC, I think it might be the Dallas Cowboys. I could argue the San Francisco 49ers too, but the Cowboys are right there. They are loaded on the defensive side. They have a good offensive line, good skill players, a good quarterback. All the pieces are there. They were there last year too, where they could have competed with the Eagles, except for Dak Prescott and all of those interceptions. And that is a big hurdle to overcome. What was it? 15 interceptions in 12 games last year, another 2 in the playoff loss. You can't do that nowadays as a quarterback. You are just giving games away, whether it's his fault or the coaches or the receivers or anything else. If you turn the ball over that much, you're going to lose too many games. So I like Dak Prescott a lot. I was a little shocked by all the interceptions last year. That worries me going into. He's going to, pull a Daniel Jones and suddenly cut way down in his turnovers. I think the Cowboys will be right there with the Eagles. They're talented enough to do it. If he's going to throw interceptions like crazy again, they'll probably win 10, 11 games, but it's going to be an uphill battle to really compete in the playoffs.
Between his contract situation and the star on the side of his helmet, I don't think there will be a more scrutinized player in the NFL than Dak Prescott this season. I am envious of you, sir. You get to see how their season kicks off in person at MetLife Stadium for Fox Sports on Sunday. Looking forward to that. And their opponent, by the way, the New York Giants, your local team or your most local team. I don't know. They're all bunched together with the exception of the Cowboys.
They really are.
With the exception of the Cowboys, it's all very bunched together up there. But MetLife Stadium, Sunday night, I can't wait to see what the Giants do for an encore. And I would love to know if you agree with me on this. This was a team that was ahead of schedule last year. I don't think most people picked Brian Daboll to do what he did and win Coach of the Year and win a playoff game. Now my question is, can they stay that way? Because I think if you listen to the whispers, if you listen to the prognosticators, a lot of people think the Giants are going to take a step back, but there's a lot to like about this roster. There's a lot to like about what they've done, whether it's adding Darren Waller, whether it's drafting a bunch of exciting rookies. Their defense is underrated. So can Brian Daboll, especially with the expectations a little bit higher than they were last year, Do you see a regression, or do you think the Giants can kind of stay ahead the way that they did last year?
Well, it's going to kind of depend on your measuring stick, I think. If you are looking at the overall growth of the program, the talent, the play on the field, yeah, I think they can stay ahead of schedule. I think they were very ahead of schedule last year. I don't think even if you gave truth serum to Brian Daboll and Joe Shane, the GM, I don't think they thought they had a playoff team last year. So if they look at this season as the season that they would finally start to compete a little bit, and they are better. They did go out and get Darren Waller. They got more speed at receiver, Paris Campbell, Jalen Hyatt, the kid they drafted in the 3rd round. They did add to that defense. So it's a better team, and there's going to be a better product on the field, particularly on offense. The question I have is, what are they growing from? Because they were 9-8 or 9-7-1 last year. They started out 7-2, and they won a lot of games that when you look back, they really kind of pulled them out of nowhere. They really won games they probably shouldn't have won. They got some breaks that didn't happen in the second half, and they really regressed. If they hadn't won a playoff game on the road in Minnesota, this whole story of the Giants would have been how they fell apart after that 7-2 start. But they won that playoff game, and now you're thinking, okay, well, they're for real again. So it's just kind of this curve where they went up, then down, and then a little back up again at the end. So I'm not sure what they were last year. What I can kind of see for this team is they're better, but they're not going to get the same amount of breaks. The schedule is a little harder. I could see a position where they're the same record, maybe even a game worse. But you look at it and go, it's a better team. The record's not better. That ascension isn't there, but it's a better team. Maybe they sneak into the playoffs, but they're still kind of in that 500 range. They're just not. I don't think they're that perennial contender yet that they want to be. I think that's still probably a year away.
I absolutely agree. And I think what's going to be fun for the Giants is I think you can see how they improve or whether they improve based on how they play in these games. I mean, at the end of the day, they had a -6 point differential last year. And obviously, when they went up against Philadelphia in the playoffs, you saw the difference between a true contender and what the Giants were. But I think they have the potential, like you said, even if the record's not as good, I think they have the potential to play teams much closer and be much more competitive across the board. And they have a huge opportunity to do that with a Dallas team that they have not been beating often recently.
The big thing for them, I think, is their offense is going to give them a chance to compete better than it had in the past. Last year, that offense was a train wreck. I mean, Daniel Jones, I think, threw 15 touchdowns overall. That's not elite numbers by any stretch because he had a terrible receiving core. He didn't have a reliable tight end. Teams could stack the line on Saquon Barkley, who still had a great season despite all that, but he didn't have a lot of room to run, not a lot of breakaway runs. This year, they've got Darren Waller, who was legitimately Travis Kelce-like before he got hurt. Now he's 31 now, and that was 3 years ago, but the potential is there. There's a lot more potential, a lot more speed on offense where they can have these big breakaway plays and score a little easier than they have in the past. So that's really going to help them. But that's, again, if everybody stays healthy and they're not like a lot of teams. They're not very deep, so they're 1 or 2 injuries away from it all falling apart. But there is at least the potential there for them to be more competitive and look like a better team.
Let's wrap this thing up with the most exciting Commanders preview ever. And honestly, no matter what happens to the Washington Commanders this season, that will stand. Like what a breath of fresh air to feel like we can actually give proper credence to the Commanders heading into a season. And Ralph, as someone that's covered this league and this division as long as you have, I'm curious if you've ever heard of a situation where an entire organization is interviewing for their jobs, because that's what it feels like. Whether you want to talk about Ron Rivera being in an all-important 4th season, or Eric Bieniemy auditioning and trying to show the league that he deserved an offensive coordinator job way earlier than this, and obviously Sam Howell getting a shot as the starting quarterback speaks for itself. But with a new ownership group in place, nobody's got a lot of job security. A, I'm curious if you've ever seen something like this before, and B, I'd love to know how you think it's all going to shake out.
Yeah, this is new to me. I think you'd probably have to go back maybe to, for a total house cleaning place, maybe when Jerry Jones bought the Cowboys years and years and years ago. But usually an owner takes over and there'll be some changes and they'll be more subtle. But Josh Harris bought a franchise that needed to be fumigated. I mean, Dan Snyder was, aside from all the scandals and stuff, everything fell apart under his watch. The business, the facilities, the things that the players need. So everything's got to change. There's going to be a lot of people held accountable for that. It wasn't just Dan Snyder. And even if it was, the people that he hired didn't do their jobs in a lot of cases. So, off the field, you're going to see, I think, huge changes over the next year. But what we'll focus is on the field, and the product just hasn't been good. I mean, if you spent $6 billion on a team and you start to, build a new stadium and change all the operations, do you want to coach and a general manager who have a 22-27 record or whatever it is over the last 3 years? Probably not. Which means he's going to be watching this year to see, can these guys win? What can Ron Rivera, Martin Mayhew, Eric Bieniemy show me to believe that they can win? And I think what makes it the most fascinating of all is their fate is being tied to a 22-year-old quarterback who was a fifth-round pick and who has played one game in the NFL. It's not like they've got Lamar Jackson that can go bail them out. They got basically a rookie quarterback. And we've all seen it. There are always, even Peyton Manning, there are ups and downs for rookie quarterbacks. It is not a situation where you think, I got my guy, I'm going to go win now. But they have to win now. So it's totally fascinating to me, and it's a new situation, no doubt. And I think that they're all realistic about it. So I think Ron Rivera knows his job is on the line. I'm sure Martin Mayhew does. I'm sure that Eric Bieniemy's eyes were wide open when he took this job, and Josh Harris is going to be watching every corner of that organization. So much so that unless they have a surprise year, we're not going to recognize anything about the Commanders a year from now. Possibly even the name, but maybe nothing else.
Yeah, which. I love it so much because even a team that most people agree is not ready to contend or maybe even compete, we'll see. But for those reasons, they are just as interesting to me as the teams that are going to win 11, 12 games. Ralph, thank you so much. Before we let you go, I got to put everybody on the spot. Two of the best teams in the NFC in this division. Who you got winning the NFC East this year?
Well, I do have the Eagles winning the division. I think they are the best team in the conference, the deepest team. They can probably withstand the issues and problems and injuries better than anyone else. But I tell you what, the Cowboys may be the wild card in my scenario, but I would not be surprised to see them at Lincoln Financial Field in Philly for the NFC Championship game at some point, because they really might be the two best teams in the NFC.
Great minds think alike, my friend. Look, I'm sorry to my Dallas people. I didn't have the guts to pick the Cowboys to win the division. I'm going Eagles as well, but I think this is the year the Cowboys make some serious noise, and we will get to that later. Ralph, thank you so much for your time.